One of the goals of my 6th grade students is to learn how to draw more realistically. They are introduced to the 10 key drawing words, which include foreshortening, surface, shading, shadow, overlapping, contour, detail, size, daily use, and of course, positive mental attitude. Once the students learn how to draw some of the basic shapes, we start to look at the idea of what types of objects could actually be those types of forms. And with that, students are then introduced to one of my favorite artists and one of my favorite subjects. And the artist, of course, is Wayne Thiebaud. And one of my absolute favorite subjects are sweets. They are introduced to this concept of artist sweets. And so students are asked to identify what are some of their favorite types of sweets. Once students go through, we start talking about the different type of genres or subject matters that artists might use to create their pieces of artwork. And in that process, students start to see how Wayne Thiebaud was instrumental in creating portraits, landscapes, and eventually still lifes. His most widely recognized ones, of course, are his sweets. In the process, students get to see a small video about Wayne Thiebaud as an American artist, and we watch CBS Sunday morning video clip as we wrap up our first day. When we return, we start talking about this idea where my students generate what they think of as sweets. And so we see the connection between the sweets and what types of forms they might possibly be. Of course, we all know there's a few variations on them as well. One such example is where students then are asked to generate their list of sweets and then decide how they would actually draw them. Here is just one of those examples. We have a piece of cheesecake where they can see that it is a foreshortened cylinder, and I do show them how to take out one of those pieces so that they can have a bite if they would like. We also look at this idea of developing a ground and a surface that they will actually sit on. So in the case of my cupcakes, you can see the cylinders and how things are overlapped to create the illusion that there are objects on top of one another. Students are still required to ground their subjects. Diagonal lines are going to create a different effect than what a horizontal line is. And with that, then students carry on and move on to the idea of adding more detail. When we look at this idea of more detail, what we are really looking at is this idea of adding more descriptions. More of a description to say, what else do we see? Those textures and those ooey gooey gobs of Cool Whip and drippy, syrupy flavors as well too. Students will even get to the point that they start to look at this concept of creating their own thumbnail designs of more than one. Such an example would be the idea of our drawing challenge, which is where they come up with a list of all different types of sweets, different categories including candy, desserts, drinks, fruit, etc. And in their sketchbooks, they work through their ideas of how to make their sweets pop off the page, adding all of those additional details. In addition, they are required to include a surface area where it would sit on, consider if they are inside containers, and also then to consider all those extra details that are there. This is a really fun assignment for my students because not only do they get to work with some of their favorite subjects and some of their favorite treats, but they get to design their own composition, learn how to work with oil pastels, to create three-dimensional forms, how to do shading and rendering, and how to mix colors using oil pastels. With this idea, my students were able to create their own versions of Wayne Thiebaud compositions, which are based off of his style.